In preparing for the sermon this week, I distinctly recall something my Hebrew professor said last year as we were about to interpret an assigned text. The professor said this: leave your 21st century thinking behind as you read through the text and take a good look at what perhaps God is up to. Well, and this is particularly true this week as we delve into the lessons today. Lessons of intimacy, marriage, relationship, gender, legal justifications, manipulation, and divorce. Lessons which, over the years, have been used to justify oppression, convey a patriarchal framework for marriage, and justify sex in the city, or the garden, perhaps, in this case. Not biblical texts, by the way, that I would have chosen to preach on today, but as Christians, we are called to enter into the full human experience. And sometimes that takes us to places we would rather not go, enter into exchanges with people we would rather not meet, and engage in topics we would rather not discuss. Our Genesis story today speaks volumes about what truly encapsulates God's love and care for creation, for all creation, all of it. God's yearning to fulfill a deep need within the human creature whom God has breathed life into. A human creature shaped and formed from the dirt into God's own image, the image of God. Intimate relationship formed out of the very breath of God. And I don't know about you, but that takes my breath away, and it leaves me with a sense of awe and helps me understand the diversity in which is our God. It is not good for the man. In Hebrew, the word man translates as ha-hadam, the human, to be alone. Note that up until now, God has repeatedly said that everything being created is good. In fact, it's very good. The skies, the moon, the stars, the water. But in this second account of the creation story, God surveys his horticultural creation and he senses something is wrong. And this discovery highlights what is fundamental to human nature and human flourishing. Humans are social creatures who thrive in close and intimate relationships with each other. So God gets to work. And out of the ground again, he calls into being every animal of the field and bird in the air. And even though the human could choose from every living creature, there was still a void. There was a longing within the original human. So God, in all his glory, anesthetizes the human, and he creates a new being, a helper, one who is so closely connected they share bone and flesh. And when I got to this point in the sermon, I couldn't help but think of a game I play with my grandson. You know, we spread out the cards with pictures of animals and on them, and colors is one game, and we kind of line them up, and the goal is to pair them And whoever has the most pairs wins. So we flip them over, and Tristan says, oh, nope, it's not a match. Try again. Nope, not a match. Finally, my grandson says, Grandma, I got a match. And God says to the humans, I got a match. I surmise that the joy it gave my grandson, Tristan, to finally get a match that may have paralleled the persistent love showered over the human creature and the relationships that ensued. Experiencing God's unadulterated care for us expands our capacity to love. It in no way diminishes our love when love is found. It in no way diminishes our love when love is found. We are all a child of God, and we always will be, even when we don't believe in it. Even when we have felt angered or wounded or excluded or outside the realm of any possibility or possibly even being loved, we are loved by the deep, deep love of God, whose intimate relationship gives us the ability to live into the joy of companionship. And that's why, in our gospel lesson today, Jesus becomes a tangible and visible representation of the deep love that originated from the very, very beginning. People matter to God. Married, divorced, separated, single, in a relationship, out of a relationship, gay, straight, rich, poor, mortals, all mortals matter to God. And Jesus fully understood this and was well aware of the Pharisees' manipulative line of questioning about the law in conjunction with divorce. You see, Jesus, in Mark's gospel, is getting closer and closer to Jerusalem. And it is within the midst of this opposition and wrangling of Mosaic law that Jesus brings the Pharisees, the legalistic interpreters of the law, back to the beginning, back to God's design to provide wholeness for all human creatures and protection for those who are vulnerable, those who are marginalized and pushed further and further into the margins by a moralistic society and moralistic laws. Is it lawful, asked the Pharisees, for a man to divorce his wife? And of course, I love this. Jesus always responds with a question. Well, what did Moses command you? And of course, the Pharisees could recite the law without hesitation, or a deepening sense for which it was written. The Pharisees state, Moses allowed a man to write a certificate of dismissal to divorce her. And that law, Jesus says, was written for you, Pharisees, the hard-hearted. Now, to fully understand Jesus' response and reference to the Mosaic law, we need to first understand this cultural shift. And in order to do that, we need a little background information ourselves. The institution of marriage during the time in which the laws were written was primarily a means of ensuring economic stability and social privilege by creating both offspring and inter-family reliances. If the husband chose to dismiss his wife for whatever reason, combed her hair wrong, looked at him wrong, the law stated that he had to write a bill of divorce and give it to her if he was going to divorce her. You see, survival for a woman depended upon being a member of a household. And without this document, this decree of divorce, she had no means of explaining why she was unmarried, which exposed a woman to great risk, to shame, and with little possibility of remarrying. It left the woman vulnerable, alone, and as far from God's original intention for marriage and connectedness as could be. Divorce is a painful reality. I know. It severs the flesh of two people, and it tears apart the fabric of families and communities. It leaves children exposed to more heartache and pain than their young lives can often endure. And sadly, it has been part of the full human experience for a very, very long time. And I surmise that during the time of Moses, as well as in our culture today, the stigma of divorce is often charged with more judgment than grace. And we forget that we are all made of the same bits of bone and clumps of clay and given life through the breath of God. Marriages were called into being by God and are a vital piece to the very fabric of creation. Care for them. Remind each other daily of the gift that you are to each other. And you know, sometimes my muddy memory, perhaps yours too, forgets that this expanding love of the Creator fills us, all of us, with this great capacity to love, regardless of our current status. God's persistent love and care for each of us pursues us. And each and every day, God exclaims, "You're a match! You're a match, Char! You're a match, Mary! You're a match! You're a match! We are a match with God." Amen.